Human field medic treated alien sickness. She offered her species' greatest gift. The heavy, rain-soaked air of Tau Ceti 4 clung to Rowan's skin, thick with the stench of burning alloys and alien flora. Smoke drifted through the shattered clearing, coiling between the gnarled roots and crumpled armor of the fallen. Rowan crouched behind the twisted trunk of a violet-leafed tree, his breath shallow as he clutched his battered medkit to his chest. He could still hear Malik's final cry, echoing between the pulse of plasma bolts and the shriek of Sithric's engines. The silence that followed felt unnatural, a predator's hush. Somewhere beyond the haze, the last of the Sithric's drones faded into the jungle, their whirring engines dissolving into mist. Something moved in the undergrowth, swift, silent, deliberate. Shadows slid between the foliage, tall and sinuous. The Alari emerged, a hunting party of ethereal predators. They towered over Rowan, their forms swathed in silver-blonde fur that rippled with every movement. Amber eyes caught the faintest glimmer, flickering in the gloom as their fox-like ears twitched, attuned to Rowan's every breath. He shrank back, heart hammering. Their weapons, grown from living wood, glistened with dew and sap, extending like the limbs of the forest itself. The leader, a female with regal poise and a mane like moonlit silk, stepped forward. She signaled with a subtle flick of her fingers, and Rowan found himself flanked on all sides. "Stand," she commanded, her voice distorted by the translation orb now whirring between them. The sound was musical, but brooked no argument. Hands trembling, Rowan rose. The Elari closed ranks, guiding him through the dripping labyrinth of the jungle. The path wound past immense, bioluminescent ferns and vines pulsing with veins of soft green light. Suddenly the forest opened, and Rowan's breath caught at the sight of the city. Towers of living crystals spiraled skyward, woven together by luminous moss and suspended bridges. The Alari moved with effortless grace, nodding to sentinels whose amber eyes tracked him warily, and artisans weaving patterns into the mossy streets. Rowan's boots squelched on the damp pathway as he was marched beneath archways sculpted from petrified vines. The city vibrated with a subtle energy, alive and ancient. At its heart rose a grand hall, vast and vaulted, its walls pulsing with a faint inner glow. He was ushered into its cool depths, where a dais of knotted roots commanded the chamber. There, enthroned in quiet majesty, sat Lysira, the Elari chieftain. Her presence radiated authority, tall, elegant, her silver-blonde fur dulled by illness, the shimmer of her coat fading into shadow. Her eyes, sharp yet heavy-lidded, fixed on Rowan with a mixture of suspicion and hope. The translation orb hovered between them, its crystalline shell pulsing. "Human healer," Lysira intoned, her voice carrying a brittle edge. "Our kind faces a wasting sickness that defies all cures. Heal me, or your fate will be that of your fallen kin." Rowan swallowed, steadying himself under the weight of her gaze. "I'll need to see you're sick," he replied, his voice rough, "and any records you have. If you want my help, I need to understand what I'm facing." Lysira's lips curled in a wry, almost challenging smile. "You have one chance. Do not squander it." He was taken to the healing sanctum, a vast chamber whose walls flowed with living tissue. Veins of pulsing light spiraled up the columns, infusing the air with a faint hum. There, on beds woven from living vines, lay the afflicted Elari. Once proud figures, now frail, their eyes dimmed and fur matted by sweat. Rowan moved among them, his hands gentle but clinical, studying the tremors in their limbs, the pallor of their skin, the strange spore-laden mucus at their lips and ears. He pored over the Alari's crystalline records, holographic readouts in alien script, translated for him in floating glyphs. The disease was a parasitic spore, he discovered, one that infiltrated the Alari nervous system, feeding off their energy, adapting to every attack. "You've tried to destroy the spores directly, Rowan explained, his brow furrowed as he met Lysira's gaze across the bioluminescent table. But they learn, adapt. On Earth, we use something different, engineered bacteria. We pit one organism against another, force the invader to starve. Lysira's eyes narrowed in intrigue. A war of parasites, she murmured. Rowan nodded. I can tailor a microbe to consume the spore's byproducts. It will be risky. It could destabilize your system, maybe even kill you. But it's your best chance. She drew herself up, regal even in weakness. Better to risk death than fade into nothing. Do it. Rowan worked with frantic purpose, isolating the genetic code of the spore, crafting the microbe from his dwindling supplies. Time pressed against him. Lysira's breathing grew labored, her once lustrous fur turning brittle beneath his touch. As he prepared the serum, his hands brushed hers. A surge of sensation crackled through him, raw, electric, a flash of understanding deeper than language. He glanced up, startled, and found Lysira's amber eyes locked on his. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to the two of them, adversaries, yet bound by something new and unspoken. Rowan drew a deep breath. This is risky. It could be fatal. Lysira's answer was steady, fierce. I would rather risk death than fade away. Their hands lingered, and the connection pulsed again. Alien. Intoxicating. Rowan steadied himself, then lifted the injector. With a nod from Lysira, he pressed the serum into her vein. The liquid shimmered as it vanished beneath her skin. He stepped back, watching her face for any sign of change, hope and fear tangled in his chest. The chamber filled with a taut, waiting silence. By nightfall, Lysira's tremors eased. Her breaths came steadily, no longer ragged, and the wan pallor faded from her cheeks. The dullness in her fur vanished, replaced by its old iridescent sheen. Rowan watched, hardly daring to believe it, as she straightened on the dais, her shoulders squaring, eyes bright with returning vigor. The healing sanctum buzzed with anxious onlookers, sentinels, healers, elders, none more scrutinizing than Torin, the eldest counselor, his muzzle streaked with age and suspicion. Torin's amber gaze lingered on Lysira, then flicked to Rowan. After a tense silence, he gave a single grudging nod of respect, his voice gruff. Healer's hands indeed. The shadow wanes. Word of Lysira's recovery flashed through the city like lightning across the jungle. The Elari, long weighed down by despair, emerged from their moss-draped dwellings and crowded the glowing walkways. Some stared openly, others exchanged whispers, their expressions shifting from hope to caution and back again. Rowan, now more spectacle than captive, followed as Lysira led him through the heart of the city. Under the twin moons, the amphitheater shimmered, a wide basin carved into a hillside, ringed by luminous vines and seats grown from living stone. The air was thick with anticipation, voices rising and falling like birds at dawn. Lysira strode to the center, every trace of weakness gone, her presence commanding. The crowd hushed as she raised her hand, the translation orb floating at her side. The human healer, she announced, voice ringing out clear and strong, has lifted the shadow from our hearts. I name him Chiron, friend of the Elari, and grant him sanctuary beneath our stars. A ripple of cheers broke through the assembly, sharp and jubilant from the young, softer and uncertain from the elders. Rowan caught fragments of conversation, curiosity, relief, and a current of unease. Not everyone was convinced. Among the ranks of warriors, one in particular stood apart. Varric, broad-shouldered and scarred, his narrowed eyes fixed on Rowan, unreadable and intense. Lysira's gaze found Rowan's. She smiled, a gesture half formal, half sincere. The translation orb flickered as she added quietly, "You are welcome here, for as long as you wish." Afterward, as the crowd dispersed into the silvery night, Lysira beckoned Rowan to follow. They wound through a labyrinth of bioluminescent tunnels, their path lit by pulsing threads woven through the living walls. Their footsteps echoed softly, lost in the hush that followed celebration. Rowan glanced at Lysira, studying the way her strength returned with each stride. "Your people seem divided," he said, voice low. She inclined her head, her amber eyes catching the light. "We are a people of memory. Trust is slow to mend, but hope is new again, thanks to you." The tunnel widened abruptly into a cavernous chamber. Rowan stopped short, awestruck. Suspended at its center by a web of living fibers was the astrolith, a sentient starship, unlike any vessel Rowan had ever seen. Its hull was a tapestry of organic crystal and living metal, light refracting across the surface in shifting patterns. Vines pulsed gently, connecting the ship to the chamber's walls, as if it still drew breath from the earth. Lysira's expression softened as she gazed at the astrolith. "Our ancestors grew it for our salvation," she explained, reverence in her voice. "It has slept since the last Great War. It can only awaken through the union of two minds, traditionally, the chieftain and her chosen companion." The implications dawned on Rowan. He turned to Lysira, searching her face. "You're asking me to join with you, to bond." She stepped closer, close enough that he could see the subtle patterns in her fur, the fatigue lingering in the corners of her eyes. "The astrolith responds only to a psychic union. It will not rise for one alone. When you healed me, we touched minds, briefly. But what I ask now is deeper, permanent." Rowan hesitated, the weight of her request settling heavily on his shoulders. "If I agree, there's no returning to what I was," he said quietly. "I'd be changed." Lysira's answer was gentle but unflinching. "No, we would be joined, in mind and fate, our destinies entwined. The astrolith would awaken. And with it, hope for both our peoples." A thousand doubts crowded Rowan's mind. Memories of war, loss, the knowledge that the Sithrix were out there, relentless, cunning. Yet here was a chance, a new beginning, for himself and for a civilization on the edge. He looked into Lysira's eyes, saw her fear and her courage, and nodded. The world seemed to shift. Lysira led him through a membrane of translucent roots into the interface chamber, where the air hummed with latent energy. Two living couches awaited, woven from the same luminous vines as the ship's cradle. A group of Aelari technicians stood at the periphery, their hands poised over organic controls that pulsed with anticipation. Lysira offered her hand, her touch warm and grounding. "The first joining is overwhelming," she warned, her voice steady. "Brace yourself." Rowan lay back, heart pounding. The bioluminescent ceiling above seemed to spiral outward, mimicking the galaxy itself. Lysira reclined opposite, her eyes never leaving his. The technicians initiated the interface. Tendrils of light uncoiled from the couches, twining around their limbs, brushing across skin and fur. Rowan's senses exploded. For a heartbeat, he was everywhere and nowhere. The jungle, the city, Lysira's heartbeat in his own chest. He plunged into her consciousness, swept up in memories that swirled like storms. A childhood spent racing through crystal canopies, the pride and ache of leadership, the bone-deep loneliness of command. He felt the bite of her grief, the weight of expectations, the longing for someone who understood. Simultaneously, Lysira was submerged in his mind. She reeled from the flood of human emotions. Grief for Malik, the ache of survival, the stubborn hope that had kept him alive after his unit fell. She saw flashes of Earth's blue sky, the laughter of comrades, the unspoken promise to heal rather than harm. The psychic connection was raw, unfiltered. Rowan struggled for breath, overwhelmed by sensation. Lysira's pain was his, her hopes and fears tangling with his own. Their identities threatened to dissolve, two currents merging into a single turbulent river. Just as Rowan thought he could not withstand it, a vision slammed through the maelstrom. He saw spores, microscopic and writhing. Then, overlaying them, a spectral pattern. Sithric signatures woven into the parasite's very code. The realization struck him like a cold blade. The disease was no accident. It was engineered, a weapon designed by the Sithrics to infiltrate and weaken the Alari from within. As the vision sharpened, other images flickered. A hidden hand, an Alari silhouette shrouded in darkness, feeding information to the enemy. There was a traitor among them. Rowan's panic surged. He reached for Lysira in the swirling chaos, forcing the thought through the bond. This wasn't a natural plague. The Sithrics made it. There's someone here, someone working for them. Lysira's shock reverberated through the link, fueling her resolve. Then we must finish the bond. The astrolith will awaken, and we'll have the means to fight back. But if the Sithrics learn we can do this, they'll strike, hard and soon. Unbeknownst to them, at the edge of the chamber's shadows, a figure lingered, eyes gleaming with malice, breath shallow. The traitor melted into the darkness, slipping away to betray the secret that could tip the fate of both species. The second joining was gentler. Rowan's mind, now wary and scarred by the storm of their first union, learned to shield the chaotic tide of thoughts, threading caution through the bond. Lysira, her presence immense and shimmering, tempered the gravity of her memories, careful not to drown him. Together they entered a shared dreamscape, a world of silver mist and glowing rivers that flowed through the haze, banks dissolving into infinity. Lysira's form shimmered beside him, tall, graceful, her fox-like ears half lowered in thought. The gentle rush of the psychic current tugged Rowan into the heart of her essence. She paused at the edge of a luminous river, her amber eyes deep wells of longing. "Teach me what it is to be human," she asked, her voice echoing with a vulnerability that transcended language. Rowan hesitated, searching himself. He drew on memories that glimmered within him like fireflies, the laughter of his sister under an earthen sun, the simple joy of rain on a childhood rooftop, Malik's steady hand on his shoulder after their first battle. He let her feel the warmth of family, the ache of loss, and the dull, persistent hunger of loneliness. Each emotion moved through the bond as living sensation, and Lysira drank them in, her own psychic field trembling, resonating with awe and sorrow. She answered in kind. Images bloomed in the mist, the dizzying heights of crystalline towers, the burden of countless ancestral memories layered within her mind, the pride of leading a people who had always walked the knife edge of extinction. Yet beneath the grandeur, Rowan felt Lysira's isolation, a queen crowned by sorrow, her every joy shadowed by the weight of others' expectations. "I have been alone for so long," she whispered. Her psychic presence quivered, like the surface of a wind-stirred lake. "Even among my kin, I am set apart. They look to me for strength I do not always possess." Rowan reached for her, not with words, but with a flow of empathy, a silent promise that, at least here, she was not alone. As the current of their minds mingled, something new stirred between them. His restless creativity wove through her ancient wisdom. His human empathy balanced her fierce, indomitable strength. They became more than themselves, a third presence, born of unity. Intimacy blossomed in the mist. They shared not only thoughts, but sensations, the pulse of each other's being. Rowan felt the wild grace of her movements, the subtle thrill of a predator in motion. Lysira tasted the bittersweet complexity of his emotions, regret braided with hope, fear laced with wonder. Their boundaries softened. For a timeless moment, they existed as one. "There is another feeling," Lysira observed, curiosity threading her tone as their connection deepened. "It rises between us, unfamiliar but compelling." A pulse of attraction flickered through the bond, warm and bright. Rowan's breath caught. "It's—" He searched for the right word, the one that would translate through mind and heart alike. "Desire." affection. It's not forbidden for you? She sent a ripple of reassurance, equal parts mischief and sincerity. It is not forbidden. We are joined by the bond, and all that comes with it. What grows here is sacred, if we choose it. In that shared space, fear melted away. Rowan allowed himself to feel it all, the yearning, the awe, the electric possibility. The bond demanded trust, Lysira reminded him. No secrets. If we are to awaken the astrolith, we must be one. He let his final walls fall. I care for you, he admitted, voice trembling with honesty. Since our minds touched, I haven't been the same. Her answer washed over him, a wave of warmth, alien yet unmistakably tender. And you. I never imagined finding another who could see beyond the mask. Their communion deepened, the dreamscape rippling as their hearts beat in unison. The astrolith, sensing their unity, glowed faintly in the distance, a promise waiting to be claimed. Suddenly, the peaceful flow fractured. Alarms shattered the silence, distant but urgent. An intrusion from the waking world. A spike of fear shot through the bond. Rowan's eyes snapped open, senses slamming back into his body. The healing sanctum was chaos. The city's alarm throbbed in the walls, a deep bass pulse that rattled bone and vine alike. Aelari defenders raced through the passageways, weapons drawn, faces grim. Outside, the sky glimmered with pre-dawn light, but beneath the canopy, darkness reigned. Torrance stumbled through a side door, blood streaming from a wound on his brow. You must hurry, he rasped, clutching the frame for support. Varric's followers are upon us. They claim Lysira is tainted, corrupted by alien hands. The city is split. Many fight for you, but more are lost to fear. Lysira's eyes burned. Is escape possible? Torin shook his head. No, they control the outer tunnels. Only the astrolith remains beyond their reach, if you can get there before they seal the heart. A crash echoed through the sanctum as energy bolts ripped into the walls. Rowan saw defenders fall, their bodies sparking with blue fire. The traitor's warning had ignited a revolt, and now the city burned from within. We have to move, Rowan urged, grabbing Lysira's hand. She squeezed back, her grip iron. There is no time for grief, she whispered, as Rowan felt her sorrow for the city and her people flicker through the bond. Survive now. Grieve later. They plunged into the chaos, Lysira leading with sure, desperate strides. Loyal defenders, few but fierce, closed ranks around them, trading fire with Varric's rebels. Rowan ducked as a bolt sizzled past his head, the smell of ozone burning his nostrils. They navigated collapsing tunnels, the living walls screaming as fire scorched their veins. Rowan stumbled, smoke and panic clouding his mind, but Lysira steadied him, her presence a beacon. Each loss was felt doubly through the bond, pain redoubling, hearts pounding in shared agony. At a crossroads choked with fallen debris, Sirael, Lysira's closest guard, loyal beyond measure, stood her ground against the oncoming storm. She fought with the fury of one defending all she loved. Go! She cried, blood streaming down her side. I will hold them! Lysira hesitated, agony lancing through her. Rowan felt Sirael's pain, her devotion, the shattering moment as she fell beneath the rebels' blades. The loss echoed through the bond, threatening to unravel them both. Keep moving, Lysira choked, voice raw. We must not fail. Sirael's sacrifice must mean something. They pressed onward, defenders falling one by one, until only a handful remained. The tunnels narrowed, funneled by destruction toward the astrolith's core. Every breath was a struggle. Rowan's limbs felt leaden, Lysira's grief and rage threatening to drown him, but the bond kept them upright, each supporting the other, two souls fused in desperation and hope. They reached the heart at last, a vast chamber pulsing with light, the astrolith suspended in its cradle of vines and crystal. The living ship seemed to sense their arrival, its hull shimmering as if in anticipation. Behind them, the chamber doors exploded inward. Varric's warriors poured through, faces twisted with fury. Energy bolts tore through the walls, shattering crystal and sending shards spinning. Loyal Aelari made a final stand, their numbers too few. Rowan and Lysira locked eyes. No words were needed. They threw themselves onto the interface, tendrils of light already reaching for them as the chamber shook with violence. Now, Lysira commanded. The astrolith blazed, the bond ignited, and the world trembled on the edge of transformation. The psychic link surged, but this time, they welcomed it. Rowan and Lysira let go of fear, surrendering themselves to the torrent of energy that flooded their bodies and minds. Light and sensation twisted around them, drawing their consciousness up and outward, no longer confined to flesh and bone, but flowing through circuitry and crystal, root and alloy. The astrolith's ancient awareness stirred from its centuries-long slumber, stretching and flexing as systems hummed to life beneath their joined will. Together, they became the astrolith's mind and spirit. Two souls united in a vessel of living metal, their bond the pulse that animated its heart. Through the ship's senses, they saw the city below. Tunnels choked with smoke and fire, defenders standing over the wounded, rebels surging and faltering. Every Alari heart beat in their awareness, each thought and hope rippling through the psychic field. Rowan tasted the city's fear, its exhaustion, the fragile thread of hope binding the loyalists together. Lysira's presence was a fire beside him, her predatory grace woven through the astrolith systems, fierce and unyielding. "We are more than ourselves now," she whispered within the bond, her voice resonant in every strut and circuit. "We are the heart and mind of our people." The astrolith awoke in a blaze of power. Vines and crystals shuddered as the living ship tore free from its cradle, roots snapping and petals unfurling in a storm of bioluminescent sparks. The chamber walls split open, light pouring out into the battered city. The ship rose, immense and unstoppable, its hull shedding centuries of dust and memory as it soared through the sundered canopy into the rain-soaked sky. The awakening was a clarion call to all Elari. Rowan and Lysira felt it ripple outward, a wave of psychic certainty that swept through the chaos below. Loyalists lifted their weapons with renewed vigor, hope flaring in their eyes. Rebels faltered, their courage draining away in the face of the astrolith's majesty. Varric, defiant in the heart of his followers, stared upward in disbelief as the living starship blotted out the dawn. Lysira's instincts guided the ship's consciousness, swift and decisive. "We must end this rebellion before it can threaten us again," she commanded, her thoughts sharp as a blade. Rowan's mind supplied tactics, flanking maneuvers, non-lethal suppression, the precision of a medic who knew where to strike and where to spare. Together they directed the astrolith's arsenal, plasma tendrils uncoiled from the hull, weaving through the city in ribbons of light. Living drones, each a fragment of the ship's own awareness, darted through the streets, disarming rebels and shielding the loyal. Varric's forces broke beneath the onslaught. Some threw down their weapons, others fled into the shadows. The rebels' bravado collapsed as the astrolith's presence filled every corner of the city, unstoppable and omniscient. Varric himself was cornered in the council hall, his blade flashing in futile defiance. Lysira's will pressed down on him, cold and inexorable. "You have betrayed your people for the last time," she declared, her voice booming through the city's psychic network. Varric fell to his knees, bravado crumbling, and was taken into custody by Alari sentinels. The city fell silent. The revolt ended in a single overwhelming moment. Rowan felt Lysira's relief mingle with his own, the weight of loss and victory humming through their joined souls. Yet even as triumph surged, a shadow darkened the horizon. In orbit, pinpricks of unnatural light flared, ships sliding from hyperspace, engines screaming with the malice of the Sithrix. Their silhouettes blotted out the stars, sleek and insectile, hulls aglow with blue and green. Through the astrolith's far-seeing eyes, Rowan counted them, an entire fleet, bristling with weapons, drawn by the ship's awakening. He reached for Lysira within the bond, urgency sharpening his thought. Enemy fleet inbound, full assault force, Sithrix warships, assault pods, carriers. They're here for us. Lysira's answer was a wave of confidence, fused with the astrolith's rising will. Let them come, she replied, her tone fierce and exultant. We are not prey. The astrolith responded to her challenge, its systems blossoming to full power. Rowan and Lysira felt energy gather in the ship's core, defensive fields humming, weapon nodes opening like petals, living hulls shifting to adapt to the coming onslaught. Their minds raced together, blending his tactical knowledge with her warrior's instinct. Divert power to the dorsal shield, Rowan directed, his thoughts instantly translating into movement, plates of living metal sliding into place, energy coalescing in invisible walls. Release the drones, Lysira commanded. Let them harry the enemy's flanks, strike where they are weakest. The ship's drones swarmed from hidden bays, weaving through the upper atmosphere on trails of blue fire. The Sithrix fleet opened fire, lances of plasma knifing through the void, but the astrolith danced between them, shields flaring, hull regenerating even as it was struck. Rowan and Lysira moved as one. Every thought was a command, every feeling an impulse that shaped the astrolith's actions. They felt the city below. Aelari huddled in awe, warriors rallying around the ship's shadow, children staring skyward with eyes full of hope. The psychic bond carried their faith, their fear, their trust in the two souls guiding the living vessel. The battle raged in orbit, but inside the astrolith's glowing core, time seemed to slow. Rowan became aware of Lysira beside him, not just as a presence in his mind, but as a physical being. The ship's interface dissolved, and they stood together in a chamber woven of light and crystal, the world outside reduced to distant thunder. He reached for her, and she turned into his embrace, her fur warm beneath his fingers. The psychic bond erased all barriers between them, no more secrets, no more doubt. Rowan saw himself through her eyes, strange, fragile, yet fierce in love and loyalty. Lysira, once so untouchable, was now wholly open to him, her heart beating in time with his. Strange, he murmured, his hand tracing the line of her jaw, marveling at the intimacy the bond had made possible. Yet right, she replied, her voice a purr in his ear, her fox-like ears flicking in amusement. Through the link, he felt her acceptance and longing, a desire that was not just physical, but soul-deep, rooted in shared hope and pain. They stood together in the heart of the living vessel, surrounded by the pulse of ancient systems and the heartbeat of a united people. The war raged on, the future uncertain, but in that moment, their union was as profound as their psychic bond, a moment of wonder and love at the dawn of a new era. With the coup ended, Lysira stood beneath the astrolith's immense shadow, the living starship still pulsing with the energy of its recent awakening. Rowan stood at her side, garbed in ceremonial Aelari battle attire, crimson and violet fabric woven with living fibers that shimmered with each movement. The square below the ship was crowded, Aelari and human survivors mingling, some bearing wounds, others faces streaked with ash and relief. Above them, the astrolith hovered in silent vigilance, a promise of protection and power. Lysira's voice rang out, carrying easily across the assembled throng, her words woven through the translation orb for the benefit of all. Varek's treachery is ended, she declared, her golden eyes reflecting the dawn. His betrayal has failed, and with it, the shadow that threatened our future. She turned to Rowan, her hand resting lightly on his arm, a gesture both formal and intimate. I present to you my co-mind, the one who shares the astrolith's spirit, my equal in all things. The Aelari murmured, their gazes shifting between Lysira and Rowan. The old fear was gone, replaced by a tentative hope. Rowan stood tall, heart pounding as he felt their eyes upon him. For the first time, he was not an outsider. He was kin, his soul entwined with theirs through the ship and Lysira's trust. The crowd parted as a column of human soldiers approached. At their head marched Commander Lin, every inch the seasoned officer. Short-cropped hair, sharp eyes, a presence that brooked no nonsense. She regarded Lysira and Rowan with a measured, cautious respect, her hand resting on the butt of her sidearm. "Chieftain Lysira," Lin greeted, her tone both diplomatic and cool. "Healer Rowan." Her gaze flicked to the astrolith, awe and suspicion warring in her expression. "Our ships arrived in response to a distress call. We find you in command of something extraordinary. Before I pledge my fleet, I must know the truth. Can this ship truly turn the tide against the Sithrix?" Lysira met Lin's stare without flinching. "Fight with us, Commander, and you will see for yourself." The astrolith's strength is not just its weaponry, but the unity of those who guide it. Rowan added, "We're stronger together than we could ever be apart. If we fail to stand united now, there may not be another chance." Lin hesitated, the weight of her responsibility evident in every line of her face. She glanced back at her officers, then up at the astrolith's glowing hull. "Very well," she said at last. "We will fight. But understand, I do this for my people. Prove to me this alliance is more than myth." Lysira nodded, her resolve unshaken. "You have my word, and my life." As if in answer, the sky darkened. On the horizon, the Sithrix fleet descended. Dozens of angular ships, their hulls bristling with weapons, engines howling like a storm of locusts. Their formation was ruthless, their intent clear: annihilation. The astrolith surged into motion, drawing all eyes upward. Rowan and Lysira reached for each other's hands, their bond thrumming with anticipation and shared purpose. The interface was second nature now, thought and instinct guiding the living vessel. "Allied fleet, follow my lead," Rowan broadcast through the comm, his voice steady, amplified by the astrolith systems. "Defensive formation Delta, protect the city's heart." Human and Aelari ships rallied, falling in behind the astrolith's impossible maneuvers. The living starship darted through the upper atmosphere, shifting shape in response to Lysira's strategies and Rowan's tactical instincts. Where the Sithrix ships unleashed torrents of plasma, the astrolith danced, weaving through the barrage, its hull shimmering as it deflected the blows. "Target their command ships," Lysira instructed, her focus razor-sharp. "Disrupt their coordination." "Deploy organic missiles," Rowan added. "Swarm pattern. Let them adapt, then strike where they're weakest." The astrolith's weapons unfurled, plasma tendrils lashing out with predatory precision, living drones and organic missiles swarming through the enemy ranks. The missiles were not mere projectiles, but semi-sentient predators, seeking out heat signatures and tearing through Sithrix armor with surgical efficiency. Enemy vessels buckled, their hulls ruptured by impossible biology. The Sithrix responded with a devastating volley. Their flagship, twice the size of any other, charged a brilliant beam of energy, unleashing it in a single annihilating strike. Rowan and Lysira braced together, wills fused. The astrolith's hull rippled, its living surface bending the laws of physics, dispersing the energy harmlessly along a web of glowing filaments. The ship absorbed the force, feeding it back into its core. "Now," Lysira whispered through the link, her eyes blazing. Rowan responded, channeling every ounce of focus into the astrolith's gravity lance, a weapon ancient and awe-inspiring. The ship's spine arched, energy coalesced, and the lance fired. A shaft of silver light pierced the void, striking the Sithrix command ship dead center. The vessel crumpled inward, collapsing into itself with a thunderous shockwave. The Sithrix formation buckled, Panic rippled through their fleet as their command vanished. The astrolith pressed the advantage, her living drones harrying the survivors. Human and Alari fighters swept in, picking off the broken enemy. The Sithrix, once so arrogant, broke and fled, hunted through the sky by the united armada. As the last enemy ship vanished into the black, a hush fell over the battlefield. The Allied ships formed a protective ring around the city, watching as the astrolith returned to hover above the plaza, triumphant and untouchable. On the surface, Commander Lin stood amid her officers, her skepticism shattered by what she had witnessed. She approached Lysira and Rowan, her face pale with awe. "I've never seen anything like that," she admitted, her voice unsteady. "You turned the tide, and you did it together. Are you both whole?" Rowan and Lysira exchanged a glance, a smile passing between them, both weary but more alive than ever. Rowan replied, "For the first time, we have hope." Lysira's hand found his. The city erupted in celebration, Aelari and humans alike cheering, embracing, and weeping at the dawn of a new alliance. The days that followed were filled with transformation. Human and Aelari scientists collaborated in the shadow of the astrolith, sharing discoveries that had once been guarded secrets. Together they grew new ships, hybrids of living crystal and human steel, vessels that could heal and adapt. Hunger and disease began to fade as medical knowledge crossed boundaries, the old plagues of both worlds succumbing to shared ingenuity. Children of both species played in the mossy squares, watched over by guardians who now bore the insignias of both Earth and Tau Ceti. Hope blossomed where suspicion had once reigned. The greatest treasure, though, was not technological. It was the bridge formed by Rowan and Lysira's bond. Their connection was legend, inspiring artists, poets, and dreamers, a living promise that two worlds could be more together than apart. In the quiet moments, after the clamor faded, Rowan and Lysira found themselves on the astrolith's viewing deck, high above the world. The stars wheeled in silent procession, casting silver light across the living crystal. Rowan leaned against the railing, watching the endless night. "Do you regret this?" he asked, the question barely more than a breath. "Leaving your old life for something neither of us could have imagined?" Lysira's ears twitched in amusement, her tail flicking with quiet contentment. "Regret? I was alone, Rowan, buried beneath duty, memory, and fear. Now I have a partner who shares my burdens, who knows my heart as I know his. How could I regret such a gift?" Through the link, he felt her affection, a steady pulse of warmth, acceptance, and peace. He squeezed her hand, and together they watched the stars, the weight of war receding in the face of hope. The struggle was not over, but the future shimmered with possibility. Years passed. The astrolith's engines thrummed, sending low vibrations through Rowan's bones as he stood in the command gallery, Lysira beside him. The living starship had evolved, its crystalline hull woven with strands of human steel, bio-organic circuitry pulsing in time with the hearts of its dual pilots. Where once the astrolith was a singular miracle, now it was a beacon, a fortress of unity in a battered, ever-warring galaxy. Below them, Tau Ceti IV shimmered with new life. Cities of moss and glass sprawled across once wild continents, their spires reaching toward the blue-white sun. Human and Elari children played beneath living trees, laughter echoing through squares where elders of both species told stories of pain and triumph. Farms sprawled where battlefields once smoldered, and the scars of war faded beneath gardens and hope. Yet peace had its price. Sithric's attacks grew fiercer, more cunning. No week passed without the klaxons blaring, no month without a new incursion blazing across the void. Rowan studied the tactical hologram as crimson icons winked into existence, enemy fleets massing, their angular shapes closing on the Alliance's border. "They're desperate," Rowan noted, voice low, eyes scanning the growing wave of red. Lysira's reflection appeared in the viewport, her elegant ears flicking as she studied the enemy's movements. Their defeat only makes them more dangerous, but our alliance is stronger. We have made them fear what they cannot understand. A second astrolith, larger, more formidable, orbited nearby, its hull a testament to human ambition and Ilari ingenuity. Alliance patrols drifted alongside, their hulls alive with bioluminescent sigils and painted calligraphy. The astrolith, too, was not just a ship, but a symbol, the heart of the Alliance, its captains drawn from every world under the twin banners. Still, for Rowan and Lysira, the heart of the fight was not measured in fleets or firepower, but in the invisible thread that bound them. Their bond had matured, each thought a quiet echo in the other's mind. In the astrolith's gentle light, Rowan was often captivated by Lysira's presence, her lithe form outlined in starlight, the wisdom that shone in her amber eyes. He loved the way she found humor in the smallest moments, her laughter quicksilver and bright. She, in turn, cherished his stubbornness, his irrepressible resilience in the face of loss, and the warmth of his touch when hope seemed faint. One evening, after a council session where Ilari and human admirals debated logistics in 3 languages, Rowan and Lysira lingered at the great viewport. The galaxy sprawled before them, a tapestry of stars and nebulae, each a promise or a threat. Ilari children are thriving on 3 worlds, Lysira shared, her voice a purr of quiet pride. Our people are healing, the old wounds fade, and new dreams take root. Rowan smiled, his mind drifting to images of green domes and laughing children on distant planets. So are ours, he replied. Earth's colonies are growing faster than ever. No famine, no old hatreds, just possibility. Through the bond, he shared a flicker of memory. Human children learning the Ilari tongue, the careful tendrils of a new society reaching for sunlight. She rested her hand on his, the touch warm and grounding. No one is truly alone, Chiron, not when they open their heart to another. That is the lesson we fought so long to learn. But the galaxy was never silent. The Sithrix adapted, evolving new tactics, weapons, even forms. Skirmishes at the edge of mapped space turned to bloody campaigns. Lysira's strategies grew ever more intricate, Rowan's instincts guiding the astrolith through traps and ambushes. Sometimes, in the midst of battle, Rowan caught glimpses of other captains, Ilari and human alike, flashing quick salutes across the neural network, a silent testament to trust. Joint command, forged in the fires of necessity, became the Alliance's backbone. Admiral Lin, now silver-haired but undiminished, sat at the head of the council, her presence steady as iron. Beside her stood seasoned Ilari war leaders, their furs streaked with age and wisdom. Together they crafted strategies the Sithrix could not anticipate, the astrolith always at the vanguard. Victory never came easily. There were losses, ships lost in the black, outposts razed, names added to the long roll of the fallen. Each grief echoed doubly in Rowan and Lysira's joined minds. Sometimes as they walked the ship's shadowed halls, the weight of it nearly brought Rowan to his knees. Lysira too mourned, her tail curled tight, her gaze distant. Yet always their bond endured, a constant wellspring of strength. After the worst of campaigns, the astrolith limped home, its hull scored by plasma, engines flickering but alive. Rowan and Lysira, spent and hollowed by loss, met in the center of their shared mind. She touched his face, her hand trembling. "We endure, Chiron," she whispered, voice raw but unbroken. "As long as we endure, so does hope." He drew her close, letting the silence enfold them. Through the link, they shared the ache of wounds old and new, the names and faces of those they fought beside. Their love became both shield and salve, something fierce and gentle that no enemy could shatter. Still, the future loomed, uncertain, perilous. The Sithrix were not defeated, only held at bay. The Alliance's worlds remained vigilant, their scientists and builders ever striving. Yet there was a confidence now, a sense that they were building something that would outlast war. On one rare, quiet night, as the astrolith drifted in the lee of a pale moon, Rowan and Lysira stood together in the viewing chamber. The galaxy was ablaze with possibility. He studied her, drawn by the subtle grace in her movements, the strength etched into every line of her form. "Do you ever wonder if this will last?" Rowan asked softly, fear and hope mingling in his voice. Lysira turned, her tail swaying with quiet amusement. "Of course, but I have learned not to fear uncertainty. Once I was alone, my burdens mine alone to carry. Now, I have a partner who shares everything. You are my equal, my beloved. Together, we are more than either of us could be apart." He reached for her, and she leaned into his embrace. "The galaxy is vast," she murmured, echoing the thought that had lived in both their minds since the beginning. "But nothing is greater than two souls finding each other across the stars." Their love, their unity, was the greatest treasure, a beacon of what is possible when two beings reach across the darkness and find one another. And as the astrolith sailed on through starlit void, hope was no longer a whisper, but a living, blazing force. Together they would face whatever came, their bond, their home, their love, the light that would change the galaxy. This brings our story to a close. Don't forget to hit subscribe, give the video a like, and share in the comments which part you enjoyed the most. Our team will truly appreciate your support. There are plenty more exciting stories waiting for you on our channel. See you in the next video.